Hi there and welcome back to the Drivetime podcast, where here at the EV Summit, we're wrapping up day one, but I wanted to catch a couple of really good guests for you to just talk about some different and slightly unusual things that are going on in the EV space. I'm joined now by Chris Pritchett, who's a partner at Shoosmiths. Now, it's a weird segue, really. You're a law firm. So what brings you to an EV Summit, Chris?
It's a really good question. I mean, we're lawyers, we do law, but in order to do that well, we need to understand and, engage with industry sectors and understand people's businesses. We can't give good legal advice unless we know what challenges businesses are facing, what they're trying to achieve, and also get to know the people in that industry. So for me, coming from an energy and environmental background, sort of the move into EVs was really natural. And ultimately, it's exciting to be at the forefront of something that's changing, something that's evolving, and play a part in that change. So for us, it brings together a lot of things we're good at. So sort of energy, regulatory stuff, so what the law says, technology, AI, retail, land, everything comes together in an EV vehicle or an infrastructure project. And so, it's a hugely exciting area to be in. And also it's a great community of people, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I've worked in auto most of my career, and the space that you operate in is something I'm not that familiar with in terms of the work that you do. So obviously we see consultants doing different things. And I think for us in automotive, there are so many different new players that are bringing together different sectors that are quite foreign to us in this industry. So it'd be really good. You've said a lot of things there about working in the energy sector, but also bringing in EV. So just could you expand a little bit on, you talked about some of those projects that you get involved with. So what kinds of projects do you work with? Are you involved with government? I know you work with the SMMT quite a lot.
It covers all aspects. And I should say at the minute that Shoosmiths, before I arrived, had already had a fantastic automotive practice. So I'm acting for a lot of the OEMs and have been for years and years and years. So for us, it's bringing our sort of energy and infrastructure experience, colliding it together with an established automotive practice, and an EV and EV infrastructure is where it all happens. Yeah. So what does that mean? I mean, a huge variety of stuff. It might be doing an enormous framework agreement between a charge point operator and a chain of supermarkets. It could be advising on the impact of AI, autonomous vehicles, the data that comes out of a car. It could be advised on funding for rolling out EV infrastructure. It could be buying electric trucks. It could be leasing electric trucks. It could be litigating when something gets disagreed with. I mean, it really does cover everything. But I think where things are exciting, are happening for the first time. And our panel today was talking about investment, and actually quite often exciting stuff happening is one thing. Selling it to an investor is another thing. And I think sometimes our role can be almost as interpreter and sort of helping them triage and just trying to translate this excitement and this opportunity into something that somebody can say yes to an investment on. And that's a good skill.
What are the exciting projects that you're working on at the moment? If you can, maybe don't name names, but what you can allude to, some of the good stuff that you can see coming.
I'm in a really lucky position that actually a huge majority of the things I'm working on excite me. And either because the subject matter is great, or it's the first of a kind, or it's moving the dial, or it's for people that I really like. And one of the lovely things about this sector is that people are exciting, dynamic, change-making people. And really that is the kind of people that I like to draw my energy and inspiration from. So that's really fun. What have we got on? We've got on quite a lot of work on HGV charging. A lot of work where we are working with clients to build massive grid connections, which will then support lots of lorry charging, maybe even charging a ferry, but also some data centers. So it's trying to kind of change the way grid connections are built. Not everybody, take an example, you might have 15 people all wanting a grid connection, so they all apply and they all go into a queue. Or you can have somebody applying for an enormous grid connection who then just basically portions it up and gives it to people.
Yes.
That makes a lot more sense because it's only one application.
Yeah.
So I think we're grappling with that alongside our clients. That's quite good fun. We're deploying a lot of charging infrastructure. We're doing sort of leases, and we're doing power purchase agreements to get the energy into those charges. An awful lot of technology sitting behind that. Some very interesting models where a brand is basically subcontracting to a service provider to provide a whole load of services that support EV charging. So I think that sort of slicing and dicing of the CPO delivery is quite exciting, because people will just do what they're good at. You might be a brilliant software platform, so you do that bit. You might be a great engineer, you do that bit. And ultimately, you might well have a brand that is the charge point operator. delivered by a load of different people underneath. And as long as that charge point operator gets the customer engagement and holds the key to that customer experience, that's what they want.
The HGV charging, so the stuff that's massive makes it more accessible for consumers because you're putting in grid connections that allow energy to be available in charging points, rapid charging required for logistics companies because uptime is obviously vital. But that just means that in the way that the space race kind of, accelerated the fact that all of our microchips are now teeny, the same with energy provision. It's going to just accelerate accessibility for the rest of us.
Hopefully so. I think the thing is, if you want to put in grid connections for, a couple of 50 kilowatt chargers, that's time consuming. You put in one enormous one, then kind of you get economies of scale and it's better value. So I don't think it really solves the problem of needing a great many smaller connections at one time. And I still think that is a challenge because, as Vicky Reed will say, we want a degree of priority for fast and rapid charging, but then so do hospitals and schools. So, how do you triage where connections should be available? So I think it's down to innovative models to come out, be it Reload or other companies building private networks or IDNOs coming in and actually just trying to say, well, how do we make the most of this limited resource, which is a grid connection? And can we create a network off that allows multiple people to plug in? In fact, that's what happened in Oxford as we sat. And this was a project that came from the EV Summit 5 or 6 years ago. And it was exactly that question. We have a connection, we put a big battery on it, and then into which we can plug multiple CPOs. And in fact, plugged in Winea, Tesla, Fastned, and I think Oxford City Council's own. So again, created something that was just all around a common infrastructure platform. So I think more of that thinking, how do we do more with less?
Yeah. So CPO, charge point operators.
Yes.
So CPO is there's so many in automotive, there are so many acronyms and 3-letter somethings for something. So I think it's always worth going, CPO in this space means not chief product officer as it does in tech, but charge point operator.
Purchase order. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
But I think it's always worth pausing because I'm thinking, is that correct? If I understood you correctly, because I may not have done, I might have misinterpreted whatever it was you said. Yep. So the other thing as well, I think, when we think about innovation and some of the work that you're doing, and I was chatting to Harry Bott came on earlier on, and he's a farmer talking about EVs. We obviously see solar panels going in fields, and I'm thinking, do we need to put solar panels in fields? Do we not need to solar panel every single rooftop in the UK?
Yes, we do.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I completely have every sympathy with someone that said, well, why don't we do every roof? Absolutely. We should do that. I'll tell you what we should do is carports.
Every car, every school, every car, I think I saw a post actually recently, wouldn't it be great if you just put a roof on every single
because it stops
park.
Rain and sun.
Yes.
It generates power. The French have made it mandatory for everything over 80 car parking spaces. And really, it's either a car park with asphalt on it or it's a solar port. So completely agree with that. Rooftop, absolutely. If we could do it faster, we would be doing.
Yeah.
It's still, to put it in context in terms of doing a deal, it's probably as complicated to do a big rooftop as it is to do a fairly sizable solar plant in a field. And that, you can imagine, so the economies there, the transaction costs, it's way more efficient to develop scale. So we need both. Truthfully, we should absolutely do roofs. We should absolutely do solar carports. We should do people's houses. Every new build property should have stuff on it.
Absolutely.
And we will start to really eat into that energy demand really, really quickly.
Yeah.
We will still need some fields, but it's very few by comparison to the number of golf courses that are out there.
So in terms of innovation that you've seen here at the summit, obviously I know you're involved with lots of great projects, but what excites you from this year's summit?
I think everything hugely. I really enjoyed Esther from Thatcham talking about that, because I think one of the barriers that we've perceived for a while is the cost of insurance, and certainly the cost of repairing or replacing a battery. And I've had friends who've been in a really minor prang of some kind, and they've had the car's been written off, and you think that's simply because someone cannot assess the damage to the battery and then repair it. And it's insane, because you've got a perfectly serviceable vehicle that has been written off because someone doesn't quite know how to judge whether the battery's not only functional but safe. So I think what I'm really excited about is that the conversation that Esther's having, and it which reflects some of the stuff we're involved in, where people are building battery repair and servicing facilities in the UK. So that supply chain is being developed. So Cox and DHL have built an enormous facility to start to really provide that confidence to, dealerships or manufacturers or repair shops that are saying, actually, don't worry, we can get this checked, we can get it dealt with, and we can repair it.
Cox here tomorrow, aren't they? I think they're speaking tomorrow. We've got Philip Nothard coming on the panel tomorrow.
Philip's coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
For me, that is really exciting because it's not glamorous. It's not glamorous, sexy tech. But
glamorous doesn't have to be, it just needs to be essential.
We need a supply chain here that really functions, and then people will have that confidence that, damaged batteries can either be repaired or if they have to be replaced, they're replaced. But it means people then have confidence that it's, as Esther pointed out, it's a very big part of the overall vehicle cost. But that doesn't mean you have to throw it away if you don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
So I think that's how we come. I find that exciting because that really will change, how the insurance has got better hugely on EVs over the last couple of years. It'll carry on getting better if we can repair them when they get into sort of minor knocks. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. I think that people are constantly innovating, and I think constantly coming up with partnerships whereby OVO, energy supplier, do deals with Vauxhall, do packages. You have, the NatWest banks doing. You have a current account, you get a charger and sort of free charging. And I think that
it's incredible, isn't it?
The variety of this bundling is exciting. Yeah. What upsets me is how little it happens on the ground with chargers. I think there's an opportunity missed there, which, people are doing brilliantly in terms of productization of charging packages and, using those existing accounts or subscriptions or relationships. I just want to see it a bit more on the ground. I want to see my app directing me to Greg's, I don't need an app to do that, actually. I don't need an app for that. But I think that's my point. I think there's still some, as you say, low-hanging fruit's a great way to put it. Yeah.
It feels like a really obvious connection. Wherever you park your car, wherever there's a thing you want to go to and you're there for any length of time, then absolutely put a charger there and encourage me to go and use it.
I still think we need to see the value of charging, and I think a lot of it is on the revenue that the charger produces, which is fine because that's your anchor. But I think quite often, increasingly, it'll be, we just heard it as a panel as we were stepping out, I've now changed my supermarket because I shop at that supermarket because I reliably charge there.
Yes.
So the value of that charger is beyond the money for charging.
My weekly wallet is there.
It's suddenly become customer loyalty and a weekly shop. So I think it'll be hard, but we need to capture the holistic value of a charge point because it's not just utilization times cost.
No.
It's actually that customer is now a regular customer. But until you capture that data in the store because you've done a little offer, you won't see that transition. You won't make that connection. So it's all about
many, out of town shopping centres where you've got multiple retailers, and obviously town centres are struggling like mad because people have no reason to go to town centres.
And they can't park.
They can't park, and then they can't charge. So actually, but even town centres, you now see they're pretty empty. There's some,
it's sad.
It is sad. Yeah. But again, there are ways that local authority could work with those areas to regenerate and make sure you've got charging. All of it, I think, is just have a long-term strategy, please, local authorities, and think about how you can work with, businesses to encourage that behaviour. Money always encourages behaviour.
Nudges. We looked at things we call mobility hubs, where you have different modes of transport, and the value of that potentially as something that could really sort of bring people into a city centre, keep them there.
Yes.
Point them to something else, and if you can sort of encourage people's behaviour by saying, we'll take the bus and we'll get 20% off entry to the aquarium. And then someone goes to the aquarium and then you connect them all that via that sort of mobility as a service sort of platform. You've kept people in, you've created a sustainable thing. You've given people a better experience. You've defined your city centre in a different way.
You're boosting the economy for those people that are paying the rent in that city centre, which boosts up whatever.
And you might come in on a bus and then whiz around on an e-bike and then people home. Or they may be charging on maybe club cars or whatever. It's a really pure concept and it's a really easy one. It's complex to put in place and it involves a lot of engagement from a lot of different people. But the value
a lot of red tape.
But I do think, charging and e-mobility and transport is critical to trying to regenerate city centres. I think there's a real opportunity there. But you have to nudge people out of, I need to drive, I need to park, I need to get out and get back in the car. You have to create a different mindset. It's tricky. It's not easy. And also, it rains a lot in this country, so that's also hard.
This is also a challenge. But listen, Chris, it's been so lovely having you on this podcast. And I honestly could talk to you for hours. So I think I'd love to, I'd genuinely love to spend more time talking to you and just explore out how we can bring your thinking more into the automotive space and just kind of connect you up with more retailers that we work with and OEMs, just to kind of broaden out that just thinking differently. So I'm really glad I finally met you, and I've heard some great things about you. So it's been a real delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm joined now by Amy Stokes from Volvo Trucks. She's the head of electromobility and actually just delivered a really brilliant keynote talking about the amazing product that's coming out across the HGV range at Volvo. So Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's really good to speak to you.
So what I wanted to do is just bring out, obviously we've got an audience of EV enthusiasts and like everyone that works within the EV space in this event. And what we want to do in the podcast is to make sure that we get out of the echo chamber of within the sector and educate the broader audience about what's coming. So you talked, it'd be really good for you to talk a bit about what you're doing at Volvo and the work that's coming out of the manufacturer now.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about trucks at these kind of events because I think they're kind of quite new in terms of the discussion. There's a lot of focus on cars and has been for many years.
Yeah.
And the focus on trucks is now starting to grow. And they're actually a much bigger challenge compared to cars. It doesn't seem like it, but when you actually get into it, when you get into the sums of money involved in changing a whole fleet over, when you talk about the amount of power that you need to be able to charge a single electric truck, let alone 100 electric trucks out of a particular depot, the challenges are the same but bigger.
Yes, yeah.
It's good to get the opportunity to talk about that.
You mentioned as well in your keynote about collaboration. We've heard a lot about that over the last 2 days, that collaboration, bringing together charge point operators, infrastructure, grid serve, we're talking on the panel as well. So getting the power to where it needs to be. And as you mentioned, depot, so fleet is a big challenge.
Yep.
So it was really good. You kind of gave some big pointers of like what needs to come together to make this happen.
Yeah, well, when I'm working with operators about making that move to electric trucks, the technology is here. We have a full range of electric trucks at Volvo. We have done for several years now. It's not without certain elements of compromise, and it doesn't work in every use case. But for a lot of use cases, the technology is here and will do the job.
Yeah.
But there's three main considerations that we generally work through with operators, and that is around how they're going to charge the vehicles, how far the vehicles will go on a single charge, and also the cost associated with making that change.
Yeah.
And they're not all things that you can overcome overnight. And that's where collaboration is really important for us to identify the right solution for a particular operator, for a particular use case. That is key in terms of getting the vehicles on the road in the shorter term. And the more experience we get of individual vehicles on the road or several vehicles within a fleet, you then open up the opportunities to solve the bigger challenges in the longer term and how we transition a whole industry to a new technology.
Yeah, it's a big job. And actually, you mentioned there a really interesting point that I think there's, like you mentioned about the range, how far the vehicle will go. And that's going to change depending on the payload of the vehicle. And that's no different if it's powered by diesel. You know, if the traction unit is on its own, it will go further than if it's pulling 35 tons. So actually, there are lots of variables in that equation that you need to make sure fleet operators factor in. And I suppose the advancement of battery technology as well. So just update me on where you are with that and how do you communicate all of that and work with fleet operators?
So, I mean, on diesel and electric, whenever we're talking to an operator about a vehicle for their job, we do detailed weight and dimensions calculations. It's no different on electric. It is there's slightly more of a consideration when you come to electric because you're removing a diesel engine out of a vehicle, but you're putting in 3 ton of batteries. And that makes the chassis a lot heavier than a diesel vehicle. So it can have an impact on the payload that they can carry. The maximum range that you can cover from on a single charge, that is related to payload, but there's a huge impact in terms of aerodynamics. That's probably bigger than the payload impact.
Yeah.
The biggest consideration for us is the impact on maximum payload because of those additional weight of the vehicle, of the batteries on the vehicle.
Yeah.
And working with operators so they can understand what that payload compromise may be. And in lots of cases, there isn't a payload compromise, but in lots of cases there are.
Yeah.
So they understand that. They then need to work with their customers because they're usually moving goods for somebody else to understand what the impact of that is across the supply chain.
Yeah.
And these are all really important considerations. And one of the things that's often overlooked around range of vehicles is the link between range and payload. So we don't see massive advancements in the energy density of batteries. It's incremental improvements.
Yeah.
So if you want a vehicle to go further, you're putting more batteries on that chassis. You're making the vehicle heavier, and that has an impact on payload.
Yeah.
So it's about optimizing the specification of the vehicle for the way it's being used within the operation.
And where are we in terms of infrastructure? Because obviously those goods are being transported. Like you say, they've got a customer, they're moving the goods on behalf of somebody else. And we already know we do a lot of work with truck OEMs and their retailers to make sure that we manage things like uptime in terms of how do you service a vehicle. So how mature and ready is the infrastructure for the work that you're doing, and kind of just expand a little bit.
Well, in terms of like the service and maintenance and uptime of vehicles, we've got our dealer network in terms of servicing electric vehicles is tooled and trained, and so you can service an electric vehicle in the same way as you can a diesel vehicle, same kind of network coverage. The challenge we have is around charging infrastructure and availability of that infrastructure. It's so immature when it comes to public charging infrastructure. There are 5 sites across the UK that are dedicated for trucks. There are also a lot of bus depots that are opening their doors to truck charging now, which are kind of giving a bit of a boost to that coverage, but it's still absolutely in its infancy and patchy. 90% of the operators that have already electrified are back at base overnight charging. So they're not pushing into that, okay, I need to charge en route to make my operation work. Just a small number of them are where they can make it work.
Yeah.
We need to see much bigger coverage. And it might not be that it's all through public open access charging infrastructure. Shared infrastructure it will go a long way to supporting the transition, and that's in 2 ways. It helps the operators that are making that move to electric access the charging infrastructure and complete their routes, but it also helps those operators that have already done it, have installed their infrastructure, see a quicker return on the investment they've made in their infrastructure.
Yeah.
It also helps them to hedge that transition, or that kind of interim period where they might need to secure additional power to future-proof their fleet, but they haven't yet got the number of electric vehicles in their fleet. So they're paying a huge amount just to have that power available.
Yeah.
And if they're not using it, it's costing them money for nothing. So making it available will help that transition.
Yeah. I think there's Aid Thomas mentioned that the truck is about 8 years behind where we were with passenger cars. So we'll probably see then, and we know that solid state battery innovation is really accelerating. So I think there's going to be improvement in battery technology, which should reduce the weight on the chassis of the vehicle anyway.
Yep.
And hopefully kind of solid state, you can charge more quickly. There is technology that's really advancing so quickly, and we've heard a lot about that today, is the rate at which technology is advancing is like phenomenal. So in terms of what's next for you in the next year, 18 months, are you any sort of big launches or any exciting anything coming out of Volvo that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so we have a new vehicle that we'll be launching next year. That will be our first vehicle that features the e-axle technology, and that will be up to 600 kilometres on a single charge.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things to notice, though, is so we will be making that in a 6x2 configuration, and that doesn't work in every operation. This product is an addition to our product range rather than a replacement to our product range.
Yeah.
And over time we will see that kind of product range expand further. But this is what's coming next year.
So there's loads. I think there's so much technology, and what we want to do on the podcast is just try and make sure that anyone that wants to know more about it can start to feel more confident knowing where to go. Are there any useful resources? The majority of our listeners are across the automotive space. So are there any useful resources that we can kind of signpost to our listeners of where to go to find out more about this kind of stuff? Or
a lot of the kind of trade associations, so Logistics UK, Road Haulage Association, they're all really looking at how they can support their members with making this transition. They've got various reports out there that are looking at the challenges. And SMMT in the same way.
Yeah.
So I'd look to kind of those bodies that are sharing the challenges, sharing kind of the policy developments that need to change to support the transition as a good place. I'm also happy if anybody wants to contact me to talk to kind of stakeholders in the industry about the transition.
That'd be great. I think as well, I love the point about having a shared network. I think the only way that you're going to be able to provide this for everyone is to make sure that we open up the access to charging wherever it's available.
Yeah.
Because if you're not using it, if you're not plugged in and using that charger, but another truck is coming along and needs to use it, it makes sense to have that it just makes perfect sense to do that.
Yeah, it does. And it's a big shift in terms of how things have been done previously.
Yeah.
It's no different than if you were. Yeah. And it's no different, for residential charging, if you're going to suddenly make your drive available for somebody to come and charge.
Yes,
it's the same kind of mental shift that you need to make. Actually, we're going to have to share this to make it, to ease this transition.
Yeah.
But there's benefits, there's commercial benefits of doing it, but it's not something you kind of naturally think of.
No, I think that's really good though. So I think being adaptable, flexible and thinking a bit differently is going to be how we get where we need to get to. So Amy, thank you so much for joining me. And it was really great to hear your talk and also to learn a bit more about what's going on in the truck space, because I think we hear so much about passenger cars, and as consumers, we drive passenger cars. We maybe are a bit ignorant to the challenges that are going on in the truck space, but I think the innovation that's happening there will kind of make everything better for all of us. So thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I'm joined now by one of the stars of this event and also the reason that we're here. So I reached out to Gill and asked if we could bring our podcast to the show and interview loads of guests, and she very kindly let us come along and do this. So Gill Nowell, who is the founder of Hosted by Gill, and also you're emceeing quite a lot of the event, the commentary and the panels for today. So welcome to the pod.
Thanks so much, Jackie. It's so great to join you.
So Gill, you're a leading voice in the EV space and you've been campaigning and you know literally everybody in this sector. So I'd love to just kind of get a download of what you're seeing at the event this year, innovations that are coming, and then kind of what we can expect to see. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, Jackie, it's the 3 Ps that have just popped into my head. So it's positivity, it's progress, and it's pragmatism.
Nice.
So I think that the positivity in the room is palpable.
Yeah.
We know that we've heard from Bloomberg Neff, we've heard from Auto Trader, all the stats, we know that there are 1.6 million electric vehicles on the roads in the UK today. That if we go back to 2012, there were about 200. So, I remember getting excited when the range of the Nissan Leaf went from 75 miles to 85 miles. And we all thought, this is amazing. This is going to solve everything. And now look, the average range is 290 miles. It's remarkable.
Yes.
But if we fast forward to 2035, then we're looking at about 16 million electric vehicles on the road. So that's the positivity. And actually, that's progress as well, I guess. But the pragmatism is that actually, there is still challenges. Yeah. We heard from Amy Stokes from Volvo Trucks. The technology is there, the vehicles are there, but for electric heavy goods vehicles, we really need that partnership and collaboration to make it a true reality. We need that the consumer demand, I guess. And there are some things that still don't quite stack up.
Yeah. We've had a lot as well. So on the pod, we've had guests across the whole industry and from this whole event, which has been great. And we've had a lot about collaboration, partnerships, working together. Amy was on at the pod literally a minute ago, and we were talking about how can we think differently about things like shared charging points. If you've got a depot at one end of the country, but you're operating from another end of the country, trucks are moving around all over the place. So actually it is about collaboration and thinking differently. I think that's also really, really exciting. So I actually missed the Bloomberg chat, unfortunately. So what are the big stats that we can share? Because the point of the pod is really to try and educate retailers, OEMs, lenders, anyone in automotive to be prepared and not feel uncomfortable talking about EVs.
I think it's the fact that we are seeing profound progress. What we are looking at 9 million electric vehicles on the road by 2030, 16 million by 2035. I'm still not sure that that's enough to meet our net zero targets. However, it is still profound progress. And I think for me, whether we're looking at passenger vehicles, whether we're looking at, heavy goods vehicles, being electrified, we need to make sure that we bring the driver, whoever they may be, along with us on the journey. And we have to make things as simple as possible. So if we're talking about shared charging, for example, how do we communicate that in a way that just makes it simple? I was caught out, and I'm hands up, I'll admit it. I was caught out. I was hosting a panel, a Top Women in EV panel last week at LinkedIn, and I was talking about vehicle to load. And the very, very lovely Mark Palmer from Auto Trader, who was sat next to me on the panel, said, Gill, I don't know what vehicle to load is. I don't know what you're talking about. And that was a really, really great reminder for me that whenever I talk about EV, whenever any of us talk about EV, for somebody who's not really in it like we are, we just need to keep it simple. And the language we use, we need to make it simple, not scary, because we know, and the work that EVA England does, and I'm very fortunate to be a co-founding director of Electric Vehicle Association England, we heard from the wonderful Vicky Edmonds here, who is the CEO of EVA England, that 95% of all electric vehicle drivers that responded to the survey will never go back.
Yeah, there's a real advocacy, isn't there? There's a real advocacy in that space.
So I think that stat alone, 95% of EV drivers won't go back.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And that's because they are great to drive. They are so much nicer in terms of drive experience than petrol or diesel vehicles. Yeah. Without exception, I'm going to say that. And if you can charge at home, of course, they are super, super, super cheap. And then there are the clean air benefits that we shy away from talking about sometimes.
Yeah, no, this is true. There's so much great stuff coming out of it. One of the, I think one of the big things that came out yesterday was, so you've talked about, I suppose, those drivers never going back and how we can, I suppose, educate retailers and get more of the retailers, because we work with the retail space a lot. And what we want to try and do is make sure that when you walk into a showroom, the person that you're talking to is informed, they've driven one, they kind of understand the buzz around it, and they can then also, evangelize in the way that they need to. We also heard Gill today on the panel about residual values and how can the industry start to balance that out. And I think there's probably going to be some innovation around the kind of finance products that come along with EVs, and maybe that's what we're going to see next. But I think the advocacy at the retailer is a really big point. So how do we kind of get more retailers behind the wheel of more EVs?
Yeah, I hear time and time again, recently I heard somebody say, well, Gill, I went into a car showroom to buy an electric car. They came out with a self-charging hybrid. So there's an issue there. And then I've literally over lunch just been talking to somebody who went in to buy a second-hand electric car, and they were being pushed into buying a new one because of the zero emission vehicle mandate. Of course, they've got these targets to hit. So that's understandable. Yeah. I mean, at least they weren't trying to push a, petrol hybrid or something. But I think there's a big education piece, isn't there? I'm sure there are, and you'll know better than I do, Jackie, that I'm sure there are loads of great training programs out there for retailers.
I don't think there are. And I think that's the gap for me, is how do we make sure that we embed that knowledge within the tech that we provide? That's another thing where the partner ecosystem can do so much to bring in the right knowledge at the right time. So I think there's work to be done in the way that we can display vehicle total cost of ownership, comparison. Yeah. So you mentioned if you've got home charging, you've got an EV, so cheap, cost to run. Erin is standing over there. She's going to come on the pod hopefully in a minute. And about she talks about it in simple terms, not price per kilowatt hour, but 35p overnight, whatever the equivalent is. Yes. It's just making it real for people. Yes. But I don't think there is enough training. I think there's manufacturer product training, but I don't think we've evolved enough. And maybe what we can ask on the podcast for our audience is, what training do you need and how do we provide it for you? Because as an industry, collectively, we're a tech provider, but we need to connect in with all of those other touch points to make that available. I don't think we do.
No, I agree. And also really, and this is a personal experience that I've had very recently. I have a 5-year-old Kia e-Niro, love it to bits. It needed a new part, so I took it into the local dealership or to the local garage, and the replacement part came the next day. But I was without my car for over 3 weeks because they didn't have a skilled technician to work on it, to work on my electric car. They did give me an e-Corsa as a courtesy car, which was fantastic. Their policy is to only give electric cars as courtesy cars, which is another big tick. However, the downside to that is, and whilst I was there, a customer rang very unhappy because they'd had an electric courtesy car 4 weeks. They're not used to driving an electric car. They don't have a home charger. They were spending a fortune on public charging. So is that going to put that driver off switching to electric. So it's a
fine balance.
It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. So what can we expect? You've got obviously EV Summit in the UK. You've got a load of events going on now, and you kind of get involved with all kinds of different organisations. So what's coming next for you, Gill?
I am so excited. I'll be at the EVs in a couple of weeks. So very, very excited about that.
That's the Oscars for EV, the EV race, isn't it? The EVs.
You could say that, Jackie. Yeah, you could say that, Jackie. But there's loads going on, and I'm just going to be, hoping to be there and be amongst the wonderful EV community at as many events as I can manage. Yeah. And that's one of the things I love most, Jackie, actually, is being here at the EV Summit, just connecting with all the amazing people who are doing all this amazing stuff, and meeting new people at the same time.
It's brilliant. Well, listen, good luck at the EVs. Hopefully you'll come away with an EV. So I need to have a look. I'm not actually technically I'm kind of automotive broadly, but I think, the EVs can broaden out and cover a bigger space, hopefully. So maybe retailers who know how to sell the EVs can be in there. So Gill Nowell, founder of Hosted by Gill, and also MC at so many of these events. You're so well connected. If anybody wants to know anything about EVs, they should follow you on LinkedIn because you connect the whole ecosystem. So highly recommend follow Gill, and we'll see you at the next event. So
thank you, Jackie. Lovely.
And I'm joined this morning with Michelle Breffitt from womendriveelectric.co.uk. So it's brilliant. We were kind of, we've been trying to do this for a while, but it's just really good to have you here on the podcast, Michelle, and also just talk about everything you're working on in the EV space. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So just talk a little bit about the work that you do and how long you've been in the EV space and your background, because you've been working in this space for a while now.
Yeah, we have. So I've grown up in the automotive industry, dealer world, mainly from a marketing and sales perspective. And Women Drive Electric came along at the right time for me, really. I just switched to an electric car. I was trying to fathom my way through and get some answers. And what we decided to do really was create a space where women could ask questions and share their experiences about driving electric. We wanted to connect them to the answers that they need, especially from the automotive industry, charge point operators. And we've done it all in a supportive community that's engaging, real world experiences, authentic feel. And we have the mantra that we're EV positive, but we're EV realistic.
So when you say EV realistic, what is it you realistic about? What is it you need to be kind of like giving people the kind of truth bombs on?
Yes, I think so. We try to provide solutions to people's problems. So when somebody says, I'm looking at an EV, but I can't charge at home. Okay, we've got plenty of women who already charge away from home, public charge permanently, nurses, NHS workers, teachers that share their experiences and just give some reassurance that it is possible. You've just got to find the solutions that are right for you and your particular circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. And then when did it came along at the right time for you. So when did you launch Women Drive Electric?
We probably came into the space a bit more sort of intentional, if you like, a couple of years ago. We both were at a crossroads with our careers. Ironically, both our partners run car body shops. So we both felt there was a bit of a gap, if you like, in the knowledge of EVs, particularly with women, and the Auto Trader research confirmed that. We also found there was a gap in a supportive space, shall we say, in some of the forums. My age group, I was on Facebook, going into forums, and very often I'd be told to go and ask my husband. And as a woman who's worked in automotive since I was 15, I understand what that glass ceiling was and has to be smashed through. So as a customer, when I went into a car showroom and went to buy a car, I got the experience that I wasn't expecting, that I designed on the other side of the desk. The car was for me. The car was going to be financed by me. My husband was with me. Yet when we were leaving, and all through the conversation, the questions were directed to my husband. And as we were leaving, he shook my husband's hand and not mine. So I thought, is this just me? Am I being oversensitive? And it turns out, from speaking to real women drivers, that actually it's not an isolated case. The word that comes up when I've interviewed real world drivers, women that have been buying cars, is I feel ignored. I feel not questioned. I don't get my needs met.
Yeah.
And that is consistent across many of our members. So there is an authority gap in terms of how women are looked after as customers. And what we try to do in the group is not man bash. What we try to do is celebrate the good guys and share those great experiences for car dealerships, car salespeople, individuals, where they've provided a great service.
So one of the things you mentioned there, Michelle, was that you were being told to go and ask your husband, and actually with EVs being a new product, a lot of the guys don't have the answers either. So do you find that the traffic to your website is not just about women, it's about men coming to get the answers to those questions too?
Yeah, I mean, from conversations, and these are conversations we had a stand at the British Motor Show, Everything Electric, and our stand was buzzing with men and women. And men are sort of pointing, saying, what's this all about then? All it is that it's women sharing their experiences of driving. It's not the typical men that are talking about the cars, that are the petrol heads and sharing all the talk information. What we're actually sharing is my shopping going to fall around in the boot? Where am I going to put my bag? Can I get all the child seats in the back that I need to get in? Or have I got to squeeze the 6-year-old in between? So there's a lot of different, we just look at driving from a different viewpoint. But what I've found, speaking to many men, even in the industry, that they've been into dealerships, and there's an assumed authority when a man goes into the car showroom, but there's lots of men that don't know.
Knowledge. Yeah, there's an assumed knowledge.
Assumed knowledge, yes. So, and sometimes they don't know either.
And I think largely the retailers don't know. So the reason that we wanted to come to the EV Summit actually and bring out, we had a lot yesterday about we're speaking in an echo chamber in the EV space. People that are in the EV space or work here, you mentioned charge point operators. You're preaching to the choir here because everyone is on that electric train, so to speak. And what we want to do is amplify the message into the larger retail world to make sure that retailers feel confident having a conversation with consumers who are probably turning up informed because they visit sites like yours and they understand what the frequently asked questions are before they even come in. Yeah. But I agree. When I used to go and test drive stuff, I would turn up with my life. So I'd have my double buggy when I had smaller children. I don't now, they're grown up and they're all driving. So there was my life stage, I think our car choice reflects our life stage. Whether you've got young children, teenagers, elderly parents, your vehicle has to provide the tool that you need to do your life at that stage. So I think the big message to retailers, please, is stop assuming it's the guy that's going to drive or make the decision about the car. Some of the statistics you mentioned about the other 49%, something like over 80% of car buying decisions are influenced by women. It's a family choice oftentimes. And also, we buy our own cars, we earn our own money. We can make big grown-up decisions for ourselves. So please don't patronize us that we're not able to make a decision. We are able to make decisions. And we want to make sure that the process you mentioned you designed from the other side of the desk is flexible enough for that consumer regardless of gender. So I think that's a really, really important message. Yeah. So talk about, I know you've got Erin on your panel today and you're talking about, is it the other 49%? Is that what your panel is about?
Yeah, the panel's to discuss what charge point operators, the automotive industry, energy companies can do to engage with the 49% of, I believe it's driving licenses held by 49% women.
Yep.
But the reality is the last consensus was women are 51% of the population. So we're the majority here. So if you're not factoring in, you can say regardless of gender, we may all be equal, but we're not all the same.
Yes, of course.
As you just described, women's lives are very much multifaceted. There's a lot of factors that influence what we do each day. There's a lot of that mental load that is extra because we do feel obligated to see to sick elderly parents or make sure we're there for the school run.
Yeah.
We have to be there. So the reason why in Women Drive Electric we're EV realistic is we accept that that's the reality for many women and many men. You know, they need to be at places at a particular time.
Yeah.
So we don't go down the route of, everything's perfect. The reality is there are frictions along the way, and EVs might not be right for everyone right now, but everyone's got a right to know about them.
Yes.
And I think the information needs to be a lot more accessible and useful and relatable that's out there. So a lot of the information is from one angle. So we're just trying to broaden the narrative a little bit by sharing those experiences of all women who drive electric.
Yeah.
So we can reach a wider audience and gather that understanding.
Yeah, that's really good. So good luck with your panel and good luck with the site as well. So in terms of site, what can we do from the podcast to encourage people either to visit the site, or what if you're a retailer and you want to know more about, for me, I just think if you want to understand what consumers are looking for when it comes to EVs, I dare say your site is a really rich source of how to sell to me, because I can help you understand my pain points.
Definitely. So there's a few things that we've been labelled, and we like it. So the first thing is we are an accidental focus group.
Accidental focus group.
We are an accidental focus group. So if you are a retailer, and we do have, so we've started off with a community, which in the Facebook group, and we have a lot of women who work in industry in there already.
Great.
So if you work at a car dealership or if you work for an OEM, please join us. We don't announce who anyone is. You can join and just gather those little nuggets of consumer insight that's there, because I asked a question earlier in the week. There's over 120 comments of feedback about what women want.
So it's a great source of research. And actually, there are now some really senior women in the OEM space. So I think actually, if you're a senior woman in the OEM space, and we can tag a few in this, who are doing great work around consumer or customer experience, Ford work on the whole guest experience, and that's being designed by some great women. Yes. So I think actually guest experience looks at my life differently. I'm there, whether I'm servicing my vehicle, whether I'm buying another vehicle, I'm a guest and treat me like that.
Yes.
So I think there's some really good stuff.
Great.
So actually maybe kind of connecting up some of the OEM comments. I know Rachel Prasher at Haymarket as well works with all of the OEMs. So, and does some great work around the great women. So I think, some of the work she does reflects some of that, across the sector, whether it's automotive or just EVs. So there we can maybe get some other women involved in the movement.
So definitely. Yeah, that's the other word that people use, a movement, because it's a movement of attitudes in terms of the automotive industry are being dragged kicking and screaming into digital world, and they did it. Look through COVID, what changed? Yeah. So now we need to acknowledge the fact that female customers have maybe not always been taken seriously by some individuals, groups, top leadership, but actually that landscape's changed so much. Yeah. And the other thing we've been dubbed as the lionesses of the EV world. So, which is the best one I like. Yeah.
I watched the football last night and I was like, I prefer the women's game, not going to lie. We don't fall over as much. So
and who'd have thought how many years ago, 5 years ago even, that women would be, the uptake of women and girls doing football now is incredible.
There's a real energy behind it, isn't there? It's brilliant.
So, if we could get a slither of that, if we could get enough women, ordinary customers just interested, feeling that the industry is welcome for them.
Yes.
And they might consider it as a career. They might consider recommending to their niece or their daughter. That's the goal, because ultimately, if we have more women talking about electric vehicles, more women will listen. Therefore, more women will feel it's a welcome space for them. Yeah. And more women might just consider it as a career. And then we have more women in leadership positions.
So maybe a call to arms. I spoke to a number of CEOs at the Auto 30% Club event this year, which is a really great piece of work by Julie Muir. And actually, one of the things that the CEOs were saying to me is there isn't enough pipeline for them to promote from within. So first point is, let's make sure we develop that pipeline as an industry and start to do more outreach with schools and colleges. And we're working on that with Empowering also from Canada, bringing that into the UK to try and promote the sector as a great place to come and work. And then hopefully we can get some more CEOs to put some energy behind that to unlock opportunity at the grassroots level to get younger females into the industry to do things like sell EVs to women who are interested in buying an EV.
Exactly, yeah.
So there's lots of things that we can start to connect up, but it's really brilliant to connect with you here, Michelle, and then hopefully we can do some more projects together. We'd love to kind of get more involved with some of the work you're doing.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thanks for staying with us for part 3 at the EV Summit of our On the Road special series. Don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and a follow, and you'll never miss an episode of the Drivetime podcast.